Hey everyone, we are going to be starting in 1 minute. Please make sure to silence your microphones. And also, if you have any questions, please make sure to message them in the text box because we are going to be saving questions to the end. Alrighty. Let's see here. So yeah, it is 2:05. So we'll go ahead and start this and people will just jump in as we go. But just wanted to say thank you everybody for joining this class, this YPN class, third-party acquisitions. For those who don't know me, my name is Joel Piccolo. I have the honor of being YPN's president for this year. I work with Godwin & Stone Real Estate, been a realtor for 3 years. But the reason why we wanted to do this class is because for all of y'all who do know that there have been some third-party acquisitions that may or may not affect us realtors. I know that there's a lot of talk around that these kind of acquisitions is going to be hurtful or damaging to realtors. And so what we want to do as the YPN is kind of like clear the fog and answer any questions that y'all might have. And the best way to do that is by getting somebody to come and talk to us that is actually or was at the table while this negotiation was going on. So to kind of talk about her and make her sound amazing because she is, so Rosemary received her real estate license as an agent in Illinois in 1995 and a broker in 1986. She sold and managed a real estate office for 10 years and in 1995 became an association manager. Since 1995, she has managed 5 different realtor associations and MLS all over the United States. Rosemary has earned her RCE, Realtor Certified Executive, her CAE, which is International Designation for Certified Association Executive, ePro and AHWD, or At Home with Diversity, both in 1998 and 2021. She is the GESRN Vice President of Multiple Listings. Well, with all of that said, can I please welcome Rosemary Scardina?
Well, thank you. That really is a lot of pomp and circumstance for a short
life. You deserved it, girl.
Well, I was asked to do this presentation and it was more question and answer. So I asked myself, what is the best way to approach this? And I think most of us have heard the adage, we should all learn from history. So what I've decided to do is to go back in history, not that far, but far enough back to kind of give you an overview on how some companies, technology companies and franchises and brokerages have evolved, diversified, and acquired through the course of the years. So I'd like to start with technology providers. So back in 1987, a publicly traded company called CoStar, which for those that do any kind of commercial, are going to recognize this company as an information analytics and marketing services for a commercial platform. In 87, they came into existence. Around the time of 2012, they really decided to start expanding and diversifying. They acquired in 2012 one of their major competitors, LoopNet. In 14, they acquired apartments.com. In 15, Apartments Home Finder. In 15, later in the year, they acquired a commercial product for the use in Spain. They acquired Westside Rentals for rent.com in 2018. Now in 2020, they attempted to acquire RentPath, and the FTC stepped in and said, you're now bordering on a monopoly. And at that time, the FTC told them that they could not purchase RentPath. And it's important to remember that name because you're going to hear it again in a few minutes where a major brokerage did purchase it for their own personal use. And then in November of 2020, they purchased HomeSnap, which is the platform that powers the Broker Public Portal. And then in March of this year, they attempted to purchase CoreLogic. March 1st, they made a bid for CoreLogic, which is the technology provider that I'll speak to next. that also powers your MLS here in New Orleans, which is Matrix. And within 5 or 6 days, they withdrew that bid. And what's important to realize in that scenario was a month prior, a venture capitalist company by the name of Stone Point Capital had put a bid in for CoreLogic, which is now being considered by the FTC. And venture capitalists have a major role to play in all these acquisitions. And the reason I say that is not only have they put in the bid for CoreLogic, but they have already purchased Lone Wolf Technologies. And for those of you who are aware, Lone Wolf has also acquired ZipForms, Instanet, and recently purchased Cloud and all the cloud products, Cloud CMA included. So we go into CoreLogic, which, as I said, is a technology provider. This is also a publicly traded company. This is the company that powers your MLS, as I said before, here in New Orleans, Matrix. They established themselves in their original form back in 1996. And in 96, they did a lot of development, a lot of diversification, and they expanded into business intelligence, fraud prevention, risk management, analytics, statistics, and home and business and personal information. So around 2003 down to about 2011, they just kept expanding into different forms within the business industry, not necessarily the real estate industry. In 2011, they expanded out to Australia. And what's important is to know is in 2013, they purchased Case-Shiller. And for those of you who are familiar with Case-Shiller, you may not be aware of the fact that CoreLogic does own them. Now, what's also important to realize is we're going to go into the next company, which is Black Knight. Black Knight is its counterpart to CoreLogic. It's the technology platform, which is also publicly traded. That's the company that supports the platform that Bayou and our neighbors Baton Rouge use for Paragon. And they've been around basically since around 2011 with LPS. Like CoreLogic, they've evolved, they've absorbed MLS products, but they've also expanded what they're doing with regards to statistics and analytics and risk reduction. So those two are very comparable there. But those are, again, publicly traded companies. So those are your technology providers. So let's go into franchises or brokerage. Now, I know my dates were already outlined in my bio, so I'm not going to be hiding anything here, but I was around when Keller Williams was what came out back in 1983. And I will tell you that in the 80s and early part of the 90s, the same way you hear the term Zillow referred to, that's how people refer to Keller Williams, because Keller Williams came out of the box with an innovative approach in 83. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the fact that when something is different, it may not necessarily be bad, but it's different. And if it's different, a lot of people don't like it. And so there was a derogatory term when somebody said Keller Williams, they thought it was not the best thing. Okay. And people feel the same way now about limited service products. But the reason I bring this up is because history has a tendency to repeat itself. And Keller Williams has shown itself to be an innovative and expansive company. They were around in 83, but when you realize around 2010, they started to expand internationally. And then around 2017 forward, they diversified into all types of technology. Now, what's important to note here is the technology that they've diversified into is solely for the use of their franchisors and their franchisees. This will be the only privately owned company I speak to because all the rest are publicly traded, which is something really important to realize. Then the next one I'm going to speak to is Redfin. Redfin's been around since about 2004. I've had the pleasure of meeting and knowing Glenn Kelman, and he's always been a very innovative individual. Redfin is also publicly traded, and everything that they've done internally has been innovative and for the use of their franchise, their agents and their companies. But I bring this up too because now they've expanded out into acquiring products that they did not personally develop. And I go back to RentPath. RentPath is the company that CoStar tried to purchase, and the FTC said no. Well, then Redfin turned around and did purchase them in April of this year. So expanding their diversified list of products and companies within their organization. Now I'm going to get to the company that you're all tuned in for, and that's Zillow. Now, Zillow is a publicly traded company. It's been around since 2006. And I'm going to give you the history of this company, basically like the rest of them. They began as a media company. They began selling advertising on websites. That was 2006. In 2009, they announced a partnership with the real estate website for newspapers. Newspapers, about 180 across the country, were partnering with Zillow to advertise their real estate on those websites. That was something that the newspapers are trying to do to try to make themselves relevant. I think at that point in 2009, I think they also advanced to a revenue share partnership with the newspapers. That really didn't last long because in 2011, Zillow partnered with Yahoo to try to promote real estate advertising and launched a real estate partnership, an advertising partnership with them. It's at that point, and this is important to realize, it's at that point, the term Zillow became a derogatory term. And the reason is, and I can speak to this personally, is they really didn't start off on the right foot with regards to who owns the data and who should they go to for the data. And they thought all they had to do is just go and people would throw the data at them. I think it took them about 2 years to realize that they took a misstep. And ever since then, I would say probably 2013, they have been correcting that step. They've also been evolving. As you'll notice, they started in media advertising and advertising in partnerships with newspapers and then with Yahoo. And then they went into advertising media with brokers and MLSs. And what's important to note there is they realized that the brokers own the data. And if they wanted the data cleanly, it would have to come from the MLSs. Now, for those who are here in New Orleans, if your broker had data on Zillow at that time, it was only because your broker opted in. This MLS never gave Zillow all the data in the MLS. But at that point, they've evolved because the industry's evolved. And when the iBuyer model came out, they had an iBuyer model. And now that they have an iBuyer model, they have now evolved themselves into a brokerage, which has taken them out of the third-party portal feed. And they're getting the same data all the other brokers get, and they have to adhere to the same rules and the same guidelines that all brokers and agents do. But getting back to their evolution, they have a holding company, much like Keller Williams has KWX. Their holding company is called the Zillow Group. And in the Zillow Group, I'm going to list a long line of products that they've purchased since 2011. Some you may recognize. Postlets. If you've recognized and never used Postlets, Zillow owned them. They purchased them in 2011. Rent Juice, Buyfolio, Mortec, which is a mortgage company, back in 2012. They purchased HousePads. In 2013, they purchased Street Easy. In 2014, Retsley, which is one of the innovators with the API, okay? They purchased Trulia in 2014. So for those that have never known anything different, they didn't always belong together. They purchased Trulia in 2014. They purchased Dot Loop Forms in 2015. They purchased a company called Naked Apartments. You gotta love the name. In 16, and in 16, they also purchased Bridge Interactive, which they then put together with Retsley to develop one of the facilitators of a very streamlined process of providing APIs to brokers and MLSs. And then we get to this year, and they purchased Showing Time. Now, it's important to know that before they made an acquisition for Showing Time made an acquisition back in 19 for the only pretty much relative competitor they may have had, which was called Showing Suites. So now this particular purchase is in review now by the FTC, much like CoreLogix is with Stone Point, the venture capitalist group. And the reason I bring you all through this history is because there is a theme here that monopolies can only be established if you're focused on one aspect of the industry. The difference between this particular publicly traded company and some of the others is that this company provides the services, allows these services to be provided outside of their company. So they have the holding company, which is a list of all of those acquisitions I outlined, in addition now to the Zillow Real Estate Group. So the Zillow Real Estate is the brokerage, which sits under the holding company. All of these companies, through all of these acquisitions, have acquired all the contracts that were with those companies. And because of those contracts, each one of those contracts had security measures in place. And every time any one of these publicly traded companies acquired a product or a service, they had to be held to those contracts. And I say that because this particular issue that's brought us all together here is not a lot different from the ones that have happened in the past. So that's what I'm bringing to the table here. And I think I've reached the end of my little history lesson. I tried to make it as short and sweet as possible. And I'm going to let Joel feed me questions. I just want you all to know that if you see me, I can see you. And that if you're not muted, I can hear you. So I'm going to ask Joel to feed me questions he has, and we'll see where we go from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Rosemary. Alrighty, everyone. So if you have any questions, please start directing them now.
I've seen a couple in chat, but I didn't know what they were. Are they just communications?
Yeah, I think they're just communications as of right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I see Julie looks like she's typing. Yeah, and she is. I can see her say yes. I don't see a lot of these other friendly faces that I know are hiding themselves. As a matter of fact, all of you are hiding yourself.
So from Julie, we have, are we losing or have we lost control of our data and what we own?
No, you have not lost control of your data. Your data only goes, and when you say your data, if you're the broker of your company, you have full control of where your data goes. So, and I'm only going to speak to Jidran in this MLS. In this MLS, we do not send any data anywhere unless it's directed by the broker specifically. So I will go back to the fact that some people have lost sight of what an IDX is. An IDX feed, or a feed, whether it be a VOW, an IDX was sold, a not-for-publication, which is used strictly for back office statistics or office management. All of these feeds are at the direction of the broker with guidelines, and we have control as to if they're being used correctly, and we can easily turn those feeds off. So if you're asking as a broker, my answer to you is no. Now you should ask yourself a question. If you're using ListHub and you have not checked all of the 180 sites that they actually resyndicate to, that may be an issue as to where some are losing their control. But the control of the data coming out of the MLS, it's not an issue.
Okay. No, thank you, Rosemary. Any other questions? Does these sites pay for our listings to be published?
These sites don't get your listings. They don't pay for anything. We don't give anybody data unless the broker directs it. So we're not actually getting that information. We're not getting that money for listings. So I guess the question, I would need a little bit more clarification. You say these listings, what listings are you referring to? And I mean, what websites are you referring to? And when you say listings, because it could be only one of a few different ways that they'd be receiving that data, whether it come directly from your franchise or your brokerage. If your broker allows you to feed listings individually, but I can tell you right now that just realtor.com, homes.com are the only two that actually have a feed from the MLS, and then Data Master has it for the use of the appraisers. Zillow does not publish listings anymore from the brokers or the MLS because they are now participants of MLS. However, they do have a rental network that is charging brokers or agents if you'd like to post your rental lease listings on those, but they are not receiving a feed from us in any way with regards to a third-party portal, since they have evolved into a brokerage.
I actually have a question, Rosemary. So now that Zillow is part of that brokerage network, as we all know, whenever we're going to a listing appointment, we always hear from our sellers like, oh, well, I've done my research and I've gotten these prices, and this is where it's saying that it should be listed. But as we know, that the Zillow algorithm, a lot of these algorithms only work for cookie cutter houses, like suburban areas, because they're very easy to compare apples to apples. So now that Zillow is a part of this brokerage information, and now they're getting that data, does that mean, would that affect listing agents being able to come to listing appointments, because now sellers can get that data more accurately?
Well, I guess I'm a little unclear. So the reason the algorithm was never accurate here in the New Orleans area is because we never gave our sold data to anybody.
Okay.
So Zillow had to base all of their algorithm on the database that they developed, and that's where the deficiency lies. Now, any brokerage within the United States, because that's where United States and Canada, because that's where formal real estate is actually the only place you'll find really formal real estate. Any brokerage can set up their own type of algorithm if they want to, based on a VOW or however else they're getting their data, and if they'd like to provide something on their website. So Zillow is really not the only one that has that capability if there's something that a broker wants to provide for on their website. So I know for those who are using Cloud CMA, they have always provided, or they did provide and have provided an opportunity to include the Zillow algorithm in the CMA as it was relating to the MLS data to show how inaccurate it was. And I do know that there are a lot of agents that use that on a regular basis just to show how wrong that information was. Okay.
Kind of a follow, so I can be clearer. So now that talking about that sold data, so that was great that you said that. So now that Zillow is a brokerage, do they have access to that data now without it being sold?
Well, the question is, does your broker have access to that sold data?
So yes.
The answer is yes. And so therefore, as long as they're a participant in the MLS and they're held to the same standard as all the participants in the MLS, they're also entitled to the same services as all the other participants. And when I say participants, I mean the brokers, because what's important to remember here is the brokers are the ones that control the data. They own the listings, they own the sales contracts. They're the ones that allow the agents the service of the MLS and the ability to work, because in every state in the country and every territory, you have to be sponsored by a broker.
Okay. All righty. So we have another question from Cherie. Do you anticipate from history then that the acquisition by the Zillow Group of Showing Time that it might be rescinded?
No, I see no reason why it would be. It's not bordering any kind of a monopoly of any kind, because Zillow is the list of acquisitions that I outlined. Zillow has no other companies that are similar to that one. And the fact that that has come up, and we have all reviewed our contracts, all the MLSs in the country, and we've talked to both Zillow and to Showing Time specifically. Our contracts are airtight with security, and Showing Time has even gone the extra mile to say that they would add an addendum to ensure whatever might happen in the future. So I don't see that being an issue at this point. Now, if there are other showing products in the future, I know there are a lot of them that have jumped on the bandwagon. You know, they didn't really see the need because Showing Time was doing such, and Showing Time has evolved over the course of the last 20 years. I'm very familiar with them. I've worked with them since the early 2000s. Now that there's companies like HomeSnap and Century Lock that are jumping on the implementation of a showing product, if they get to the service level that this particular product has, and Zillow attempts to purchase one of them, there may be a consideration, I would think, maybe by the FTC, but I'm not smart enough to know exactly how the FTC determines on what border a monopoly would start.
Yeah, thank you, Rosemary. Does anybody else have any questions? No one else? I'll ask one if nobody does. So when y'all were negotiating, obviously with Zillow and everything, and with the brokerage, so is Zillow's plan, is it still trying to become like hire real estate agents or do anything like that, or are they just doing this to just get more data or to be a more effective company?
Well, it's my understanding, after talking with the higher ups at Zillow, that their model is they're using their iBuyer model as their brokerage. And when they purchase through the iBuyer model, which means, you know, for those who've been in the business any length of time that remember the ERA, if we don't sell it, we'll buy it. When they buy it from a seller immediately, they turn around and they do whatever remodeling they need to do. They're going to turn around and sell that listing. They're only going to sell the listings that they purchased through the iBuyer program, and they're only going to use their agents that they already have, which within their brokerages, which I know a lot of them are coming from their Premier Agent program. So they've told me they're not going to go competing for listings. And they've told me, and again, don't shoot the messenger, I'm just telling you what they told me. And they've told me they're not going to compete for agents because agents have to meet a certain criteria to even qualify for their Premier Agent product.
No, and just kind of talk, what was it? So our brokerage team, we're actually part of that Premier Agent group. So to kind of like touch upon that, yeah, Zillow has no interest whatsoever in becoming the next like realtor.com or like to like start their own brokerage and hire agents, because it's way too much for them to handle when, like Rosemary stated, they are more focused on their iBuyer program to use that data. So they much rather work with agents. And
if I could clarify, they are a brokerage.
Yeah.
So they were a third-party portal, much the way realtor.com is, but they're not in that arena anymore. They've now evolved into a brokerage model across the country. And that brokerage is only going to, the inventory they're using is only going to be gleaned from their iBuyer product. And the agents are only going to be those that are already a part of their organization. So just so I'm going to make it clear, they are a brokerage now. And there's no more third-party feed, and there's no more feeds going to Zillow with regards to residential listings.
All right, a question from Michelle. Should we be wary of using Showing Time now that it has been acquired by Zillow?
No, I would say no. It's an excellent product. Our contract is airtight. Our security is locked down. And as I said a little bit earlier, we've had discussions. We actually had the president of Showing Time do a presentation to the Judgment Board of Directors and advise them that he would be willing to add an addendum to anything they might do for the future. So if you're comfortable with it now and you find the ease of use something that you enjoy in your business, I say by all means. And anybody that knows me knows that I'm not an emphatic yes or no, gung-ho kind of person, but I'm confident that Showing Time will continue to be the product it is. I will also tell you that the board of directors of our MLS here is keeping an eye on the adoption rate, keeping an eye on the security. And if at any time the adoption rate is falling and the people are no longer finding value in Showing Time, that they will start reviewing all the other options. At this time, there are not a lot of companies that actually compare apples to what Showing Time has. SentryLock, the lockbox product, is launching they launched their product at the end of March, but it's only available to their current lockbox customers. And HomeSnap is in development of their product and has not come out with it yet. So there's a ways to go, and it gives us some opportunity as leaders to keep an eye on adoption, to see how the subscribers and participants are actually using Showing Time. So I'm confident that you should go ahead if you're enjoying it now, and you should continue to enjoy it.
Awesome, thank you. Next question from Julie. How do we as realtors maintain control of our destiny and our data and our privacy?
Okay, read that again. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Julie asks, how do we as realtors maintain control of our destiny, in which you mean specifically like our data and our privacy?
We'll be very conscious of where you send it. Okay. You as the broker, you decide where it goes. I mean, you tell the MLS, I need a feed for a certain product or a certain site or a certain, what I'm going to do. We make sure that it's all valid. We give the credentials to that particular technology provider. You're the one directing that traffic. So if you're directing that traffic, you're driving that train. And as I said before, with regards to ListHub, that's a syndicator that syndicates, and I may probably be exaggerating, but I may not, maybe 180 different sites. And I know it's hard because I don't know anybody that actually pays attention to the terms of service when you load a new app or look at a new product. But it's important to look at those websites, because if you just click all, you have then just given them the golden ticket to send your data anywhere.
Okay, thank you. Let me see here from Cherie. Aren't they, I guess she's talking about Zillow. Aren't they required to have a physical presence in the parishes where they are located?
That's an LREC rule, and that's something I would check with LREC. I do believe, at the last time I checked, I do believe it is, but it's not the parish. Your license doesn't say you're licensed to sell real estate in Tangipahoa. It says you're licensed to sell real estate in Louisiana. And much the way EXP has one broker for the entire state, I believe that there are other models that are following that. So with regards to the specificity of location, I would say probably for the state of Louisiana, though I would double check with LREC, but not in a parish, no.
Okay. Question from Kathy. So why is Zillow charging for a rental listing?
That's a question you'll have to ask Zillow. I'm not privy to their business decisions. I'm only responsible for the maintenance and control and security of your data.
All righty, question from Julie. So in your opinion, the broker will have control of all the data in deciding where it goes?
Julie, the broker has always had the control. That's nothing new. That's nothing new. The broker is the one that decides where it goes. And if a broker doesn't want it to go, I mean, I've already told you all where it's going from here, which is not that many places, and products that are being provided for, like Data Master, is only for use for appraisers, and it's only available if a realtor appraiser is going to purchase that product. So realtor.com and homes.com, and homes.com is an opt-in, and realtor.com is a legacy product that we're working on allowing brokers to opt out of as well.
So I guess another question. So kind of like just going this. So touching on the point that you spoke about, Rosemary, about us being able to control, hey, like if you don't want to see this product available, or if you don't want to see this product big, then you make the decision of where that information is going. So for us as realtors, we have a tough decision being able to, like, if we feel threatened by Zillow, it's really tough for us to convince our clients that posting on Zillow is not the best interest. So, I mean, what's a way for how do realtors get over that hump of like,
Well,
now our clients?
the cow's already out of the barn, guys. First of all, Zillow doesn't get your listings anymore. Again, they're not a third-party portal any longer. They're a participant, just like all the other participants in the MLS, and participants meeting brokerages. It's the broker's decision on where it goes. And you don't have to worry about debating the issue with going to Zillow, because Zillow now has the same ability you have with regards to a feed. There is no longer a feed going to them where a broker directs, that's where they want their data. The only other major site would be realtor.com. And so I think that Zillow took care of that for you by evolving from a third-party website to a brokerage, which means it's no longer an option that it go to Zillow, because Zillow has the ability to do an IDX feed.
Awesome. Any more questions, anybody? Euler.
I like the Jeopardy song better.
Yeah.
I just like to say hi to all my friends that I know are on this. I pulled the roster. I saw Cindy, and I saw Mary, and I saw John. I feel like, what was that? Not Romper Room, but the lady with the looking.
Cindy said thank you.
Yeah.
But okay, so I guess since we have no more questions, we'll wrap that up. Thank you so much, Rosemary, for taking the time. I know you're extremely busy. Honestly, you and I, we only talk like once a month, if that. So thank you.
Well, I'm always available. If anybody has any questions, y'all know where we are. You know where you can find me. And if you have any other questions with regards to this or any other issue, most specifically Rome, you know where we are.
Yes, and if y'all would like to, if y'all have any questions about YPN, like how to join or anything, please either message me or Julie or email us, and we'll definitely send you some great information. But that's it for today's video. Thank you so much, Rosemary, and thank you everybody for joining. Y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye-bye.